Morning, everybody. I've got to say, it is a pleasure personally for me to be here because I haven't been surrounded by a room of such influential people. I've read all your bios. I recognize your faces from your pics, it's good or bad. And I was prepped to believe that most of you have an enterprise background, which I felt kind of suited my background because I've spent 26 years in IT, and the last 12 of those have been at NetApp. 11 of those have been in the field. I was a professional services consultant based in Sydney, Australia. You probably noticed I talk funny a little bit, so there is an accent there. No one can pick it generally, but I'm letting everyone know that partly Australian, but I was born in New Jersey. I've been back in this country for a year now in my new role as a product manager for the Data Fabric. It was a good move. I moved to Seattle. I was going to show a picture where I came from, but I don't have it online. And what I wanted to convey is, as I said, the pleasure it is to be here. And I'm going to get started and introduce what we're going to talk about by putting on my product manager hat. So I have, for the delegates in the room, I actually have a little bit of homework. There'll be a pop quiz at the end. It's very simple, multiple choice, best out of 3. Just pass those around. Yep. So what this is a list of features that I would like you guys to rank as what you believe is to be important in a data fabric, data management scenario. These are things that we're working on. They'll be included, but in assisting with the prioritization of our messaging, I'd like you to take a before and after snapshot of your perception. So on the sheet, there's a before column, 3 choices, ranked, number 1 being the most important. Just draw a line to the one you believe is the most important out of that list of 14 features. And do that for the second and third. And then wait till the end of the presentation. And then after you've heard what those features are, revisit it and see if your perceptions have changed, or if I was able to link the messaging with what your current perceptions are. So I'll leave that with you guys to peruse for a moment. I'm going to start by explaining what we believe as the kind of the key drivers for people to move to the cloud. Typically, it's always related to money. There is a lot of money spent on hardware. There's lots of money spent on services and subscriptions, and traditionally, it's all been for NetApp's traditional business has been on-premise. It's been in private data centers, and we're on our own cloud journey. We created a cloud data services business unit that doesn't sell any hardware products, but implements all of its features on top of our existing platforms to enhance their usefulness in the market. So as part of that journey, we've had to help customers with their new buying demands, and some of those are compliance related. So you have to forgive me, these first couple slides are probably the most dry and boring of them all, given that they're just based on rules and regulations. But what we found is that our traditional buying market have been people that are willing to spend money in a CapEx deal. And because the cloud has gotten so easy to use, they're using it for their OpEx spend, and so they can rejig their books and have a different way to report on their financial earnings and make it an operational expense. And so that's facilitated by the fact that they're using cloud resources. So we've taken this into account, and what we've been trying to help customers do is to be able to use our services back in an on-prem scenario using very cloud-like features and capabilities that are highly automated a layer away, like abstracted from the hardware, because the main point, or the last point there, is that if an asset can be classified, or if an asset can be identified, then it could be classified as a CapEx spend. Even if you think you're just doing a lease and you're paying by the month, it could be reverse engineered at audit time that they will make you change your report that you might have done to the stock market. Like you could actually have to change your P&L, and that would come with additional fines, and that capability to service customers in a way that is subscription-like is where we're trying to take all of our products. The only way to do that is to abstract that away from the hardware asset and provide the human services in the middle. So, but it's not easy to change. There's 5 keys that make it hard to change, and moving to the cloud from our traditional customer base there's a lot of people involved, there's politics involved, there's a lot of planning, and those things take time. Migration efforts are pretty, could be quite onerous. The process of change itself, of getting things into the cloud, if they want to go all in, then they have to think about like refactoring their legacy traditional applications to be more cloud-like. So as part of NetApp's cloud journey, we've acquired companies that help provide those kind of services that will assist customers in that migration to the cloud. I wanted to start off explaining this slide. There's, at a high level, you'll see this slide quite a lot in the rest of the presentation, because I do marry up our own products to where they fit into this scenario. Because when you consider where our traditional customers are, this is basically a customer managing the whole stack. It was a CapEx sale. Their first ability to operate in an OpEx-based financial model is if they go to a hyperscaler who handles the networking, the storage, the servers, the virtualization stack. Like this is the hypervisor level, and then they buy the virtual machines at the OS level and kind of do what they want on top of that. So the customer's back to managing these platform and software levels if they jump into the cloud and take on board these lower level services. And a lot of our cloud capabilities are actually software as a service based. Like we use our own technology to actually provide a software as a service for some of our key cloud data services products that not only reach into on-prem environments, but across the infrastructure as a service providers, being the large hyperscalers or any other kind of cloud provider. And those are some, I suppose, easier definitions to refer back to about what pieces of the puzzle are covered by our products. And it also helps identify where we're headed to fill the gaps where we currently don't have a presence. So I wanted to help define, because there was last year's Insight, there was a customer satisfaction advisory board, and they gave us some feedback to say, well, we've got a whole bunch of products that suit the on-prem space, and we've created the Cloud Data Services business unit. We're fully focused on customers that wanted to be 100% in the cloud, and it kind of created a concept in their mind that they weren't there yet. There were several steps they needed to take to be able to get to the cloud. And what I've been thinking about quite a lot is what would we define as the individual steps, and what cloud is important to be in, like to be able to provide these operational financial models. So when the cloud first became popular, people basically said they're going to pick one cloud, kind of stick to it, and they didn't really do any work on-prem. They started with zero, and they were just all in. They were just like, no matter what, I'm just going to lift and shift and try to get as much into the cloud as possible. And when they didn't understand necessarily their on-prem workloads, it kind of freaked them out a little bit. They realized that the subscription costs and the fact that everything is metered on a per 5-second basis or shorter, that they were seeing these ridiculously large bills. So that led to a kind of a retreat back to private clouds. So the potential reasons to move back to private cloud could be for regulatory compliance. They would have realized if they tried to go to the cloud, maybe there was some data that shouldn't be in the cloud. Maybe the cloud providers couldn't let them or wouldn't let them be audited, and so they couldn't have reached all the compliant regulations at that time, probably 10 years ago or so. And they probably still would have had legacy applications that they were required on-prem that couldn't be modified. Like, imagine that was people running NT4 still that still had, they might have ring-fenced it and they might have like stuck firewalls around it and just let one kind of service in, but those things can't move to the cloud once Microsoft stops supporting them. A cloud provider that's presenting a virtual machine isn't going to stick NT4 on it because of their own security controls. So yeah, if customers haven't rejigged and refactored their applications, they could be stuck in some cases in their own on-prem data center. But they had a taste for how the ease of use of the public cloud, and they want some of that back in their own environment. So I mentioned a second ago about the viable economic model. Like, it could have gotten too expensive for them in the public cloud if they realized that they didn't understand their workload, or they were just throwing way too many things in there that shouldn't have been factored that way. And they also figure, well, maybe they felt maybe a bit locked in. Like, if they went to the cloud and they were stuck with like one provider, started using services with that provider, they might think, well, how do I protect my investment in there, or my own money-making business application from being stuck in one place? And they might have retreated back to a private cloud scenario because they wanted to have that flexibility to move back and forth. And they also might have had an application that they didn't want leaked, or they didn't want it in a different data center around the world that they didn't really have control over. So there could be like data sovereignty issues, or just a commercial protection of their intellectual property. They might think that that's something they need to hold close to their chest and keep on-prem. So that led to this retreat back from from the public cloud back to a private cloud. The only way they could create a private cloud with that same kind of automation and services is if they learned something in the experience. And if they did get to this point, then in my definition, I'm basically saying that they're now a hybrid cloud. They're existing in a place where they're using some services in a particular hyperscaler. They're still using services on-prem, so they're by definition already in a hybrid model. If we add another layer and actually add more public clouds like we have now, then we end up in a scenario where they're relying on like multi-cloud capabilities, where they want to use different services in different hyperscalers because of maybe a best of breed and a different kind of service, and they want the flexibility to move their services around, move their own applications, bring the data with it. And NetApp has been on a transformational process to actually make sure we're providing our service where customers need them. So the first strategic move was to get our high-performance storage baked into the data centers of the hyperscalers. So we've got first-party services with Microsoft. Our equipment lives in their data center. The automation of our features of ONTAP are driven by their APIs. So their front-end portal talks to our APIs to be able to provision high-performance storage on on our hardware. And that was a big move for Microsoft to be able to do that for us. And we have a similar relationship with Google, and we provide services in the AWS marketplace as well. So means that we can provide our cloud volume product in the hyperscalers, but it's not just the Cloud Volumes API in the hyperscalers. There's an S in there, so it's CVS, meaning that there's human services. And because there's human services, and we're selling it in a model that is abstracted from the hardware, then we're also helping customers maintain that operational financial model without risk of their P&L being rejigged. So this leads us to what is a data fabric? If we're trying to be where the customers need us, and they've evolved into this multi-cloud set of requirements, then how can we accommodate them? A little bit of history. Back in 2004, NetApp had actually registered trademarked the product called Data Fabric Manager. So it is going back a while. It's before my time at NetApp. It still existed as a product when I joined in 2008 to 2009, and one of its key features was a data movement capability. But it was on premises and worked with the current ONTAP version at the time, which was now known as 7 mode, and was just a way to take data that was sitting on a controller and hydrate or populate a cache using a net cache appliance. So there was already the idea that data fabric was related to data movement and getting it to the right place where it needed to be. So expanding on that, trademarks only last for about 10 years, and then you've got to kind of let them go. But we kind of re-announced that in 2014, we defined the data fabric as more of a data management strategy. There wasn't a product called Data Fabric anymore. So DFM was renamed to what we now know as On-Command Unified Manager, and but we didn't want to let go of the concept. So it was re-announced by George Kurian as a strategic concept that people should embrace because it'll help them understand how to manage their data. And it became synonymous in the market as a data movement from a point A to point B. If you've done that and you've lined up that relationship, that becomes your first thread in the data fabric. And as you do that in different places, you start weaving your own blanket or whatever kind of material you want to think about. But eventually the industry catches on, and now everyone's talking about it, having a data fabric story. Even our competitors, if you Google data fabric, they all say they've got a data fabric story. And more recently, NetApp has coined the term that we're helping customers build their data fabric by using our infrastructure and putting it in the right place. So building a data fabric means that we're using our services and capabilities to layer on top of the infrastructure all the abilities and automation to handle that data replication.